So, welcome back to the channel, folks. We have Sten Carlson here on his workbench, and we're going to do a little drawing for you guys today because it's time to discuss intentional miss. So, Sten, why don't you look up and wave at the camera so the folks know you're here? It's not some clone
It's
version
kind
of
of an
you.
awkward angle, but I think it looks good. I think
Yeah, yeah. So
it looks
nobody
okay.
gets to see your face today, but
Right.
this should be fun. So
Yeah.
what we're essentially going to be doing is we're going to be discussing the benefits for all skill levels of golfers to use the game Intentional Miss, which was my driver giveaway game that Jalen Thomas won. So
Yeah, that's pretty awesome. You guessed it. That's really cool.
yeah, did he reach out to you or anything like that?
He hasn't, but I watched the video of you guys discussing it, and it was cool to see that he was like super, um, sort of ambitious, but also like just gracious. That would be the word. He seemed very touched and moved that you would do that for him. And it sounds like you're going to work with him now and
Yeah,
help
we
him out.
we actually had our first lesson yesterday.
Oh yeah, how'd that go?
It went pretty well, man.
Yeah.
I made one small change and he hit. Literally, he quoted. He was like the three best shots of my life. So
Yeah, that
um,
that's fantastic.
it's like you and I always say. You can fix a golf swing in one lesson, but the golf industry doesn't really want you to know that. So, um,
Yeah,
anywho,
well, I think that's indicative of getting to the heart of the matter. That's kind of the way I always look at it in my lessons is what's the heart of the matter? Why are we having a problem? Um, and all the other stuff is trappings, right? It's what does Bradley call them? Vapor trails. It's things that appear when you have an underlying problem, symptoms.
right?
That's a good word. So yeah.
Yeah, love it. Cool, man. Well, let's get this thing started. So today we're here to talk about intentional miss. And I think we should probably start by explaining it from a macro view,
Mm.
and which would be kind of, I guess, your lane. You came up with this game, and I'm basically just been your guinea pig. So, why don't you explain to the folks how you came up with it and just kind of the background of how intentional miss came to be?
Yeah, yeah, great. Thank you for giving me this opportunity. It's a long time coming. I mean, I don't know how many hours I've spent discussing this with you and with other students, and it's kind of neat to finally be here to actually bring it out to the world because I think it's very powerful. So, as a tournament golfer, and as at the time a also a person who had an incredible amount of access to golf. Um, what I found was,
And just for our new viewers,
yeah, yeah,
caddy, coach,
yeah,
instructor,
yeah. So
player.
I can give a little rundown of it. So I was playing. I had a sponsor, a member sponsor, who was essentially bankrolling me to play tournaments, and I worked at a club, and the club housed me, and the housing that I lived in was a sand wedge away from the golf course, and so between working in the bag drop, picking up the range, and playing golf and caddying, I was on the golf course from sun up to sundown every single day. And so I could end every evening or I could finish up my day just playing golf and hanging out on the golf course until I can't see the ball or the mosquitoes just get so bad that you have to leave, right? So
Yeah,
it's
love
New
it,
England
love it.
in the summertime. So
What part of New England was it?
this was Rhode Island,
Rhode Island.
specifically on the island, on Aquidneck Island, at a course called Carnegie Abbey. That's now called the Aquidneck Club.
Nice.
Um, it was a little Shangri-La, and I look back on it now, 20 plus years later, and realize what a Shangri-La it was, and what a sort of unrealistic situation that is. But I found that even while playing tournaments and practicing as much as I was, which I couldn't practice any more than I did, that rounds that I was playing were not serving their purpose of making me better. What I mean by that was I found this sort of balance between confidence and competence that I was not able to strike.
Yeah, I mean,
And that's,
why don't we start kind of listing
yeah,
these things out on the board so people can kind of.
yeah. So we've got we've got intentional miss right here, right? And so the first pillar is confidence.
I mean, that's the skill set you need as a golfer
That's
because
right.
doubt will ruin your day.
Exactly right. And so what would happen is I'll take my typical day, right? I go out, I'm done. I finished whatever I'm doing for the day and I'm free and I'm going to play golf until dark. But I'm hitting it poorly. And so we've got kind of the negative side of the ledger, and then we've got the positive side of the ledger, and I'll go into both of them kind of. The negative side of the ledger is obvious. I'm not hitting it good. And I got a tournament coming up, and I'm going to jump in my car and drive up to Maine and stay at a hotel for a long weekend and pay all this money and all this time to go out there. And I'm hitting it like crap at my home golf course.
Right.
And so it was deflating. And so somebody says, well, you got to practice harder. Well, I can't practice any harder. I'm hitting so many balls and you know, and maybe if they're listening to this sometime, they could come in and verify this. But I had multiple pros at different clubs across the country tell me, Sten, I've never seen anybody practice as hard as you do. And a lot of that practice was desperation practice where I was just like, oh my God, I got to keep hitting balls because I'm not getting this, right? So the other side of the coin is the positive, which is I'm hitting every shot. I went out and played 72 holes in the last 2 days, and I haven't missed a fairway or a green. And I made 16 birdies or whatever the thing is, whatever it is.
So that would kind of this is kind of our spectrum to work off of, right? The
Yeah, so we've got this constant battle between the negative and the positive. And I found that, like, well, even with somebody who has access to the course basically 24/7, it wasn't 24/7, but basically, my access is so high that I'm like, I'm still wasting time. I'm still going out on the golf course and doing this turns into a negative and right. And I'm like, man, and what's the negative here? Which is you're not that good.
yeah,
You're
I
just
mean,
not. This is your home course. You know it well. You know every green. You're playing with your buddies and other caddy buddies or the other staff members. You're playing with members. You're comfortable. You're
yeah.
sleeping in your own bed.
And for an
Whereas,
example, for guys that are watching this and gals,
yeah,
I would say maybe you're not hitting it well with your driver, but you're hitting your irons well because this is a consistent thing that happens to a lot of people, where they're hitting their irons well and their driver well, but they're missing their wedges, or they're hitting it well but they can't putt, or
right,
they're putting
right,
well but they can't chip, et cetera, et cetera. So
yeah,
there's always, I guess, with the game of IM, it's a moving target. And the one thing I would say from a player's perspective is you can manipulate it to improve your game no matter what skill level you're at, because you can always pick a negative area to focus on when you go play.
right, right. And then there's kind of another little caveat that was kind of like a subheading to this, which is what I would just call culture. And here's what I mean by that. It might seem kind of an odd way to say it, but there's a public aspect to playing golf.
Oh man, don't
And
get me started.
if I mean, you and I need to have a full podcast on that. But
Oh
the
God.
the 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 problem is that if there are people around, so here we are. I go on the golf course. Hey, you want to go play? Yeah, let's go. What do you want to do? A little $5 Nassau? Yeah, that sounds good. No, normal bet. Okay. Well, I'm not going to go and train. I'm not going to go and do the things. I'm going to try to win. I'm going to try to play. Well, I'm playing poorly. So now I've just destroyed myself even more. You lost to that guy. You think you're going to get in a car and go beat Jeff Sisk? You're going to go beat
Right.
these guys, blah, right? No. You're going to feel like crap. Now, let's say this is that. We get the positive side. I win. Well, dude, yeah, you won, but you kicked that guy's ass. He's not any good.
Leads to
And it's not,
overconfidence.
that's right. So we've got this balance between under and overconfidence. And the funny thing is, when you really analyze them, neither of them are true. If truth is, how are you going to play when you go peg it for real? And
Yeah, I
the
mean,
answer is, I got no idea. I don't know how I'm going to play.
right.
Neither of them is indicative of what you're going to do.
Well, isn't this kind
Okay.
of like the probably the philosophical argument of all time with when it comes to tournament golf is how do you prepare to do something you can't prepare for?
That's right. How do you prepare? Well, you're a veteran, a military man. How do you prepare for what it feels like when the bullets start flying if you don't ever get to fly the bullets at somebody?
No,
You don't just stand there and shoot
you
at your own people,
no, you
right?
train. You train with
You
bullets.
train and you train and you train and you train. So let's go back to this. This cultural part is when people are around, you want to play well. And you know this, I know this. I don't care if you don't even know the people and you're not even playing a match with them. They just pair you up and say, you know, Carlson single, join in the whatever. And you go out there and you're like, hi, how are you? I want to play well. In your mind, you're like, I don't want to look like a slapdick out there and, and not be able to play, right? So that's part of it, right? And so what ends up happening is when
You
people
got
then
to write
decide,
slap dig on the table now.
right, right. Okay, okay, okay. Well, it's a family show. We'll do it next time. So then the problem is that as you go out and you start trying to play well, especially if you don't have the kind of full time access, well, now you've actually just spent money and gone through the trouble of getting to the course to make yourself worse. And that's not the goal. The goal is to make ourselves better, right? So
Right.
then what people do is they go, well, I'm just going to go play by themselves.
Yep.
Well, then we get back into this one again, which is the positive, which is when I go and play by myself, I don't miss. Well, yeah, because you're playing by yourself and there's nothing on the line. And then people say, well, you should gamble. Well, when I gamble, I play like crap, right? So
Right.
why would I go gamble and pay a green fee and go out to try to prepare me for tournament golf? And then
Right.
somebody will say, well, if you can't do it there, where? Well, this isn't the same. This isn't the same situation. I'm pegging it in a tournament where if I qualify for this, I get to play on the PGA Tour or the US Open. Or if I play good for 2 rounds or 1 round, whatever the cut is, I get to make money.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not gambling my own money against these people. It's
Yeah,
very different,
and I see,
right?
you know, like how all this was born, but I think as we've experimented with it, we've learned so much about how it
Right,
actually can improve your game. So just we'll
right,
just kind of transition into that. I think the background's clear is it was a necessity. We needed to find a way to play golf under pressure when we didn't have ways of training it, and we were surrounded by the culture of public golf, which essentially makes it impossible to train because at the end of the day, public golf, you play too fast, you can't go through your full routine or process, or it's 5.5, 6 hour rounds, and the public they just can't stand that. So,
right.
kind of moving forward, we started experimenting. You experimented with one of your students, Anthony. I've experimented. I've messed around a little bit with one of my friends, Adam, on it. He didn't love it. Um, and then
It's easy to hate.
it is. It's an easy game to hate, but I think over the years we've learned how to make it incredibly fun and not something you hate anymore. But you know, we'll get to that. So let's just talk a little bit about all the experiments and
Yeah,
you know all the things we've tried and the things you've come
yeah.
up with.
So as this was sort of crystallizing in my mind, I wrote short game down here because what I noticed was this good round became a negative because I wasn't practicing my short game enough. So I would go, like most people, back to my culture. What do? We work hard. We go to the chipping and putting green, and I would chip and putt. But that's not the golf course. That's not how the game works. You don't get another ball. You don't get another pile of balls to stand there and work. Now, if you're working technique, that's one thing, and we can talk about that, like literal, like how do I hit this shot and this and that. But
Yeah,
if
but
you're trying to,
that's not what this game is about. This game is
no,
about learning how to
this is
play
post
golf.
technique.
Right.
Yeah,
This
post
is
technique.
playing golf, scoring. Like
That's right. And so what I found was, and this is how it started to evolve, was when I had these negative rounds, I started to learn to build confidence off of my short game. You hear guys say that I made it really good up and down. That kind of got my round going,
yep.
right? Okay. And you and I have talked about this, and I'll say this. And again, if anybody knows me and listening remembers me when I was playing full time, please verify this that I had a great short game, and I had a great short game because I realized I can't be too good around the greens, and so as I was chipping and pitching, and as I was quote unquote working on my short game, I started to realize that that's not the golf course. And yeah, I mean, I can get really good at hitting these shots, but what I need to have is, and then this kind of brings us down to the emo part, the emotional aspect of you've just missed a green and you're
right,
walking
and you had a wedge in your hand,
and you had a wedge in your
and the
hand and
green
you've got to
was,
spend.
a green light wedge
That's right.
situation.
That's right. And you've got to spend the next 5 minutes waiting for these guys to hit. And then you're going to walk that 130 yards up there and you're just praying to God that you get a good lie or that your ball's even up, that you're not going to make a double. Right. And so all of a sudden now we've gone from this confident feeling to this emo, unconfident feeling. And we don't know how to train that. We're all going to hit bad shots.
Right.
We're all going to be in a position where we're hopeful for a positive result. But you've got to be able to do that without having to do a lot of self-talk and it's okay, dude, you'll be fine.
Right.
The caddy in your head.
Well, that
You
gets
have
old
to.
after a while, Like I did that
It
for
does.
years, traveling around playing pro, and I had no swing. I was going through swing changes, and all I had was a putter essentially. And when that thing went south, I mean, all I had left was positive self-talk, and that won't get you through.
No.
And
I
so,
mean, you could be the Dalai Lama himself,
right,
and after
yeah.
after 4.5 hours of just repeatedly shooting yourself in the foot,
Yeah.
it's really hard. So this brought me back to I am, which is, if I came up with a way that I could play on the golf course, one shot at a time, no extra balls, no mulligans, no nothing, and I trained my short game at the same time I trained my emotions, at the same time, and that's what we'll talk about in a minute, I trained my eye, I trained my targeting. How would I go about doing that? Because
Right.
I had a unique perspective in that as a caddy, both professionally, as in for professionals, but also as a professional club caddy, I just would spend an inordinate amount of time of my life in my day talking about yardages and bailouts and things that made me have a different perspective on framing shots. And of course, then we have the old, all the Jack Nicklaus lore and the Hogan lore and all that and all their wisdom of how do we really manage a golf course?
Right.
What do we actually do? And then again, having that kind of access, I just could go out and do it and practice it and alter it. And then
So what exactly would you start doing that kind of got this going?
I just started trying to miss greens.
That was it. Just no miss fairways. Just try to hit fairways, miss greens.
Just play the golf course from tee to fairway, legit, and then I would try to miss greens.
Okay,
and
where would you try to miss at first?
That's what I was going to say. I started out trying to give myself really difficult up and downs, like. Especially what I would do is if like I had played a match or something and I found myself there, I would, and I didn't get up and down, I would go back to try to practice it. Essentially, okay. That's my original thought. Is that's a tough up and down.
So short-sided,
and
plugged in a bunker, right?
Yeah,
deep rough,
and and the course. Probably one of the first times that I ever did that was, I can still remember it. It's just I have a weird memory that way. Is I was playing Carnegie Abbey, and if anybody's ever been by there, there's like a bus stop up on the main road, and then this big fescue covered hill, and you can see this one tee box. It's a par 3 down the hill, going right out to the clubhouse and the Narragansett Bay frame behind it. It's gorgeous. And it's a cool downhill par 3. I don't know, maybe 215
you want to draw it up for the folks? You got the board.
Yeah, let's do that. Let me get this out of the way here. So
this is kind of, we'll call this the genesis of intentional miss. The first hole, the first time you tried it.
I'm only going to draw the one tee box just
just
need to be
real basic. We don't need anything crazy.
And so this green was kind of like bean shaped like that. And then it had a bunker here, and it had this bunker really short, and then it had a bunker here. So these are bunkers. Now, this bunker in particular was a 6 foot,
Oh
five
Lord.
and a half foot revetted edge, like a
Oh yeah, yeah.
British Open style.
Yep.
Crazy. So I hit it in there. Right. I hit it in there, and I stood there and
Draw a terrible golf shot. Did you? You probably bladed it, right? No.
right in there.
All right.
And literally, I'll give you some. This is kind of the apron. So there's fairway all around like this. Okay, that's all fairway.
Okay.
And then this bunker is not really in play. It kind of frames this one here. Kind of frames the hole.
Probably like an
But this
optical
bunker,
illusion, so you get depth
yeah,
perception
yeah,
issues.
just and I don't that's certainly not even to scale. If I were to really draw it, it's probably like this. I mean, literally, it is one of the coolest bunkers you've ever seen, and you get in it, and you're in a bunker. You could just like,
Yeah, it's a pot
if
bunker.
there were, that's right. If there were an air raid, you go in there, right? So there's nowhere to swing. There's no way to do it. And
Those are the
how do you
worst,
get
man.
it that steep? So the next day, I played the course, and I was like, I don't care where the flag is. I'm going to hit it in that bunker again, right?
Okay.
And so and I've been there, and I've raked it 1,000 times, right? 100 times. I'm like, I know the bunker, but I wanted to play it, and so I hit it in there, and I found.
Now let's
my
talk real quick about
Yeah.
you were not swinging well. How'd you just knock it right in the bunker?
Well, that's what I was going to say. I was just about to say that I found that I couldn't hit it in there.
Oh, okay.
So I was like, I can't hit that bunker. Now the bunker's small, so it's like a blanket, right?
Right.
So I'm not hitting it well enough to hit it in that bunker. And I'm like, that's interesting. So I worked on it a little bit. And again, I had access, so I could go and play the loop and come back and play it again. And I found a few things on the course, a little timing. I was getting warmed up, and I hit it in there.
But I bet you noticed something about geometry of the whole setup too, which is something we've learned over the last few
Yeah.
years. Every shot plays differently, and maybe it's not your golf swing. Sometimes you get on the golf course and it's the hole. And
Yeah.
anyway, just
Yeah. Well,
kind
no,
of prefacing
it's
that.
interesting you say that because, right, like it's not really drawn to scale, but you could look and say, you know what, that tee box actually points me over there,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so even when I was trying to hit it in there, or maybe more than that, maybe so with this hole, this tee box actually points me more this way.
Right.
So I'm not hitting it to there. And so I had to hit a really bad shot. Or what I realized was, because this is the way I'd always played, was that I was taking it off of that bunker, if that makes sense. I was trying to do this.
Yeah, hit a little fade.
Off that bunker, and I hit it too straight. So when I went and I was trying to hit it in the bunker, I would hit it right here.
Right.
And it was weird. It was like I could get the result, but I couldn't do it when I aimed at it.
Mm-hmm.
And so I started figuring that, well, part of it, because I could sense it in my head, was that I can't stop looking at that flag. So I said, well, forget the flag. The flag is not the target anymore. What's the target? Well, the target now has to be over here so I can hit it like this.
Right.
And I was like, oh, now we got it. Now I understand. And that's when I first kind of started messing around with this idea of like, well, I know where I tell Mrs. Jones to hit it right here. I said, don't even worry about the green. Just take your wedge and hit it right here. Right. And this is where the full targeting started to come in. It's getting a little messy in there.
We should probably name this targeting geometry, or we could even go with like sacred geometry, because there's a lot to do with the slopes of a golf course and the design of a golf course that influences people. And I think we've learned through this game that like intentional miss helps you target so much better than just hitting at the flag all the time, or just trying to hit it at the center of the fairway. If you're intentionally trying to hit it somewhere, you pick up on subtle cues on the golf course that you don't pick up on when you're trying to hit big targets, which, I mean, we're not really telling anybody, anything they don't already know. All the greats have always said, hit to the smallest possible target. But with intentional miss, the targets are actually smaller because you have less room to mess up. And I think what ends up happening is not only do you have a smaller target, but you have a smaller miss, and so you get heightened levels of focus.
Yep.
So anyway, continue.
Well, and I think what this session, as I remember it, really had involved with it was it was a bit of an epiphany moment technique wise, because, and you've heard me say this, so this is a thing that's lingered in my game for many years, which is I'm too square. And
Mm,
a lot of people are like, oh, listen to the big man, he's so square. I'm like, no, you don't understand. Like I square the club with superhuman precision. So what happens is I'm trying to work the ball and I just don't, even though I think I should be. And that makes me feel like I'm not hitting it good when actually I'm doing exactly what I wanted to do. And the reason was because I was also really, really, really target oriented, really, really hole oriented.
it's
Lock on to,
interesting you bring this up because Adam
yep,
is the exact same way. So for those of you guys that don't know, Adam Golf Bum on our channel, he is a good friend here out in Colorado and probably one of the best naturally gifted ball strikers I've ever played with, kind of like your version of Evan. And what ends up happening is it doesn't matter how he's aimed, he just hits it at the flag. And there are people like that that have the ability to just square the club face. I mean, I would say the majority of them are probably on some tour somewhere. But when you go down the rabbit hole of technique and aiming and targeting and geometry, two squares actually it becomes a problem because you can get basically paralysis analysis, right? So that's kind of I think where you were going with that, if I'm correct.
yes. And what it comes down to, and this is something that you've heard me mention him certainly, Jeremy, is Evan Dennis has and I worked extensively on for years and years, way before this, was was eyes and how important the eyes are and where we put our eyes and what we do with our eyes.
Mm-hmm.
And I would say that in large part, these lasers, the prevalence of lasers, which I did not have at the time,
Right.
were were it makes it worse because you walk up the hole and the first thing you do is just hit the flag, and so now everything just, and understandable, that's where the goal of the game is. It's that hole, and if I can knock it in right now, why wouldn't I?
Right.
Right. So the problem is that's not realistic,
That's not the
and we hear,
game. That's what
no,
we're. I mean, that's essentially what I think our pitch is here to the people is the game is not holing out every shot. The game is playing golf, and
yeah,
it takes you have to hit to certain targets to certain areas with
yeah,
a dispersion that allows you to miss, right? So you have to pick those areas very consciously, using good course management. And then from there, you have to be prepared for your misses. So you have to miss in areas that are best for easy pars or stress free pars, especially on difficult holes. And I think
yeah,
that's kind of where my experimentations have led to. I'd say my course management is elite now compared to what it used to be. And I would say that most recreational golfers, if they could learn how to play little bits of this game, maybe not at the level that you and I would, but if they could take bits and pieces of this and apply it to their game with their buddies, they could see real results. And in course management literally overnight, and it would still be fun. But we're going to get to that probably in part 2 and part 3 of this. I think today I just want to kind of preface and say this game isn't just for tournament golfers. This game is for everybody because the advent of the laser has essentially oversimplified the game and people have forgotten how to play it.
right. Well, and I think what's happened is that at the same time, technology, other like club technology, ball technology, you'll hear it said a lot. Oh, the modern player doesn't curve the ball anymore, and Hogan had to curve the ball because they were using Balata, and there's some truth to that. There's no doubt about it. The golf ball is far more stable today than it ever was back in the day, and the necessity to hit with a shallow entry like they had to, we've talked about that, and still strike it solid is diminished. So there's a few things that are kind of true about that. However, the natural tendency, and you can see this, and I've seen it written about, is like drive down the highway and put your eyes on a billboard and find yourself on the rumble strips. Why? Well, because we go where our eyes are pointing.
Mm-hmm.
And certainly our hands will move towards where our eyes are pointing. So if we're a bit of a hands player, which I certainly was at the time, far more than I am now, right? I didn't understand geometry the way that I understand it now. Again, this was over 2 decades ago. So it was a spot where I was right, but I was wrong.
Well,
And
you
that's
were
where
a
I go
player.
back.
You weren't a coach. You know, you weren't a
Right.
teacher, and now you've graduated. You've gone from
Yeah.
being a player to a coach to a teacher, etc.
Well, that's where the confidence thing comes back in. Ah, how could I be so wrong yet I felt like I was so right? And the answer was, you were right all along. But just like a guy that goes and takes his brand new scope to the range to put some bullets down range and sight it in, it's not sighted in right. And so what's happening is that you're destroying your own confidence or you're gaining confidence. And what I mean by that, we flip the coin back over is that, or this is a mindless shot for me because I've played it so many times that I just go and I know what it's gonna and I can kind of just
Well, that's that
whatever.
home course kind of mentality.
Right,
Is like, oh, I
right.
shot even part of my home course, but then they go other places they can't break 80,
No,
and it has a lot to do with the fact that it's just drilled into their subconscious. It's not really playing golf anymore. It's just
right.
playing at
Because
home.
they're used they and this is something that the viewers might not know, but I'm a hockey coach as well, and you hear other hockey coaches talking about it. But golf, football, it doesn't matter. It's habits. What do we have? If I
Right.
have a habit of constantly zeroing in on the target as zeroing the target in on as the whole, then I have to practice doing something else. I have to practice it. I can't just decide. And one of my sort of thoughts that has developed as a coach in all capacities is that it's far easier, in my opinion, to turn something off than it is to turn something on. And I
Hmm.
mean that in technique. I mean that in all kinds of different capacities. But this isn't. I say this because this is where I'm aiming.
Right.
Right. I'm not even trying to hit it there. I'm taking everything out of play and I'm aiming in the safest spot so that I can hit to here, to there, and an easy putt, easy three.
Okay.
Okay.
So essentially, what we're training here is course management. So let's kind of bring this macrocosm into the micro sphere, and let's talk
Mm,
about the infinite possibilities that can be used and how recreational golfers can use this game. And then we'll close it out, and
yeah,
maybe next podcast we'll provide some games for people. But for now, I think we just
sure.
kind of let's
Yeah, let
kind of
them make it their own and kind of go out and goof around with it. There's no right answers.
right.
There's no right answers. It's all just like what do we get? So on the micro level, okay, on the shot selection level, and you'll hear us reference this later on. I'll write it right here. We're going to call it our I am spot.
So
You walk up
intentional
to,
miss spot.
yeah, intentional miss spot. Where is my spot? And there might be multiple spots on that hole, depending on the pin location.
What do
So
you want
right
to
off the
do? You want
bat,
to start
what's that?
from the tee? Do we want to do what do you want to do? A par four, par
Well, if we're
five?
looking at a par three, we'll do a par four, par five next, just because it adds the element of the tee shot. Let's just go with a par three because it's just
Perfect.
an approach shot, right? So
Perfect.
this can be a par three, par five approach shot. It doesn't matter if you're hitting an iron, essentially, um, for this part. What we want to do when we walk up to a golf hole is we want to say, where is the spot that is the if I could say, if somebody said you can't hit the green, but you can walk up ball in hand and place it somewhere to that pin location that is the easiest, safest up and down that you can get.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Right.
And again, depending on the hole, there's infinite number of possibilities.
Well, and
Depending on the pin location,
this is the
they that can
starting.
move.
This is the starting level. So this would
Yep.
be like beginner level, novice level,
Yep.
intermediate, or intentional miss spot. Now, more
Yep.
advanced you get, you start picking spots, behind the green or left of the
Yeah.
bunker, or maybe you want to go in the pot bunker. But for
Right.
now, find the easiest spot, right? And there's a
Find
reason
the
for that.
easiest spot. Yeah.
And there's
And
definitely a
the
reason.
I'm sorry, I cut you off. Excuse me.
Oh no, I was just saying there's definitely a reason for that you're getting
Yeah.
to.
Yeah. So the reason for that is twofold. The first is basically what difference does it make if you're looking to gain confidence in your ball striking by hitting a target, whether that target is the ultimate target, the hole, or this spot right here. It doesn't, in my estimation. It only does in your mind, and that brings in the emotional component, the culture, social component, which is they're going to think I'm not playing well if I keep hitting the ball short of the green. Okay, fine, but what difference does it make? If I go out and I play intentional miss, let's just say I played 18 holes and I play all 18 holes and I hit my target, I walk off feeling like, man, I hit my target every single time.
Well,
Well,
maybe
that's the way
maybe I
most
can
people.
speak to that because
Yeah, yeah, go ahead.
I've been playing this game religiously for the past, we'll say, 2 months, at least twice a week at a minimum. At least I'd say 9 holes every time I play it. Sometimes I go a full 18. And my original thought, my original belief in this game when I first started playing it was, man, this is stupid. I'm gonna look like an idiot. I'm gonna hate this so much. But the weirdest part about it is I walk off the course now more confident in my game than I ever have been before. When I've shot like 64 at my home course, I'm like, yeah, but I still could have shot 62. You know, I'm still hard on myself. But if I go out and I shoot a 69 and I miss 15 greens, I'm like, I'm a fucking badass. You know what
Yeah,
I mean? So,
yeah,
um,
yeah, yeah.
it's a
So
totally
there's
different mindset when you play this game.
absolutely. So there's that component, which is if you're hitting it good, you're hitting it good. And if you're hitting it not good, if you're not hitting it at your spots, you're going to miss the greens anyway, most likely. So what difference does it make, right?
Right.
What you're trying to do is you're also trying to train your subconscious to understand that if I can baseline an easy up and down, and I don't care if you're an elite tour pro, you could be the number one player in the world. If you are a baseline player where on 18 holes, on 72 holes in that tournament, you at least have an easy up and down, you're going to play fine. You're going to do fine because it's golf is the game where, man, I was just cruising along. I was hitting greens. I missed a green, but it was an easy up and down. And then boom, I missed a green, short side myself, make double, tournament's over. Right? Golf is one of those games where it's very tenuous. There's not a lot of opportunity to get anything back. There's only the hole you're playing. So you can't strip sack the guy and pick it up and go for a touchdown in football or in golf like you can in football. Your defense, but your defense can score if you get your short game in order. And this is the other side of it. This is the ironing, sharpening iron, which is now all of a sudden I start to realize, man, I'm hitting my spots, and my short game is freaking lethal.
Okay.
And I chipped in 3 times,
So let's say
right?
you start this. Maybe you don't start out with the game, but maybe the third hole in you start playing this game.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then by the sixth hole, you haven't lost any strokes. Everything's working. You're hitting your spots, and you come to a par five that's scoreable. What would you do then? You know.
So yeah, so this is kind of cool, and this is kind of the way I phrase this is it's the intentional miss evolution,
Mm,
right? And so what we want to try to do, or targeting evolution. So we're going to take our intentional miss spot, and we're going to evolve it, and we're going to evolve it based upon our confidence level and our ability to say, I'd like to try to score on this hole. Okay. And so obviously, I think personally, if I can stand and score without ever hitting a green by chipping in 3 times, like I said, I feel great. But we know that in reality, I'm not going to really do that. That's just my baseline. If it's a problem, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to just start to take this intentional miss spot, right? Let's do this. Let's make this a little more realistic, and let's say this hole is all the way back here, right? It's
right.
way in the back. Okay. So my intentional miss spot had been right there. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, well, I'm going to hit the exact same shot, but I'm really just going to bring it into this spot in here. right? I'm going to work it. I know I'm trying to say work a little cut in there. So I'm going to take my target from there and I'm going to work it onto, let's bring it a little more down here. I'm going to work it onto the edge of the green. Okay. So that's just a change in yardage essentially, right? So
Hmm.
instead of hitting this shot, I'm just going to hit this shot.
But it's
So
one
let's
more. It
say,
might be one more club, which might be a little harder for that
that's
person to
right.
hit.
That's right. So let's say this is 125 and then this is 141. Okay. No problem. Right. But let's say then the center of the green here is my next evolution. Okay. And let's say the center of the green now is, say, 156. Okay. Well, could I continue to progress more and more and more up the scale of aggressiveness while still feeling like at any time, and this is throughout the round or as I'm standing there with my yardage book trying to figure out what to do or pick the wind or whatever, I can always go and come right back here and go, you know what? At the very least, I'll have it easy up and down. And people do this on par fives, and this is where they might have already been
Yeah,
thinking about.
exactly.
Let's say this is instead of 25. Let's say this is 195, right? And
Right.
now we're up over 200, and now we're up at like this, or say
Right.
225, right, like that. Well,
Hey, just
yeah,
a
I
heads
mean,
up. I'll edit this out, but we got about 10 minutes left before we get kicked off. So,
okay, no
um,
worries.
we're doing
And
great.
so,
We're doing great. I
yeah, yeah.
just want to let you know.
So now, I mean, this is full on blasted 3 wood, and I don't like this 3 wood. I'm not super confident in it. And so you're like, what do you? You know what? I'll just take a 5 iron and I'll hit it over here, and then I'll try to make my birdie this way.
Are you familiar
People do
with
that.
Golf Sidekick?
No.
Yeah, he teaches a lot of this course management stuff, and
Yeah.
like essentially what they don't teach though is how to actually do it and have fun with it. And
Right.
when I was getting lessons from Tommy Shaw in Massachusetts, ex PGA winner, Champions Tour winner, he used to always have this saying. He's like, start far away and build confidence until you could hit it close.
Yep.
And I think that's essentially what this game teaches: how to target to your skill level, how to play
Yep.
your skill level to the best of your advantage so you can score. So I think if we go back to the I am spot and I am evolution, that'll be individual for everybody. But I think we can
Right.
all agree that for a recreational golfer, they should start with an I am spot because they honestly aren't confident enough to stuff it from 200, even from 140 to a back pin. They shouldn't be going at that. But they all
Yeah.
do. They always hit over the green or they blade it or they do something because
Well, they
they have
walk up,
doubt.
they hit it with the laser, and say, "What's it back there?"
Right.
I said, "Man, that's 276 back there." Oh, let me get my 3 wood.
Right.
I
And
mean, come on, dude.
and
Really?
they
Even if
turn
you
it
do land a 3 wood on the green, you're not going to stop it. It's not like
right.
you know. So
But they end up,
I
making 6 shots when it could have been a simple three, because
right.
they're making bad decisions because they're not properly thinking about the game the way they should. And I think what intentional miss teaches the recreational golfer is how to play their 80% shot, which I think
Mm,
most people could really gain benefit from. Um, make sure that they're hitting a shot they can hit 8 out of 10 times, regardless of where their spot is they're hitting to. If they can hit it
mm-hmm.
8 out of 10 times, they're gonna make a good golf swing. They're not gonna have
Right.
doubt. They're not gonna get in their own way.
Right. And then this is the big and part. I erased it, but short game.
Big time. Yep.
And if you're out on the golf course and you do this 18 times, you're going to get 18 pitches and 18 chips and 18 par putts unless you chip in
And there
or
might be a
more.
lot of people that don't want that though. They want to they want to stuff it when they have
Yeah.
a wedge in their hand, and that's fine. That's where the
Well, I
I
understand.
am
You don't
game
you
is
don't
in
play
it.
the game if that's what you're going to do that day. But the point is if you want to get better, okay, you can't get not can't. It's you can't get better faster than practicing in the environment under the pressure that you're going to practice in. The problem is there's no way to simulate that.
Right.
I think about Art Briles, the former coach of the Baylor football team, and they had this unbelievable warp speed, they called it, this warp speed offense. And he said, we go faster in practice
Yep.
because it's easier to slow down. I can't make them go faster than they're used to going and processing, right? And so, speaking of speed, take a moment. If you're going to pick up your laser, hit this spot first. Pick up the yardage book and go, I wonder if they have if you have one, it's listed to the front edge, or what is it to the middle? Start to frame your shot from the standpoint that, and this, I go back, that I want this as my benchmark. If I'm puking on myself, if I don't feel well, if I have an injury, if it's super windy, if I don't like the guys I'm playing with, you know what I can always do? I can play old man golf and hit it right here. And you know what that's going to do? It's going to make you realize your short game of putting suck.
Or they're really
Honestly,
good. Maybe,
or they're really good.
Maybe they're really good.
And then when they're really good, you go, okay, first off, I don't need to practice that as much. Maybe I should take the limited amount of practice time I have and practice something else. And or I need to practice that more. Which is like, I'm so good at that if I just keep getting better and better and better and better at all the stuff around it, the putting and that I can score from there.
Right.
I can score. I don't need to be on the green. And something that you brought up earlier, and you said it was kind of funny. I was going to mention it. You said, I played intentional miss for 18 holes and I missed 15 greens. And I went on to say, well, what happened on the other 3? And the answer is, I tried to miss the green, but I still hit it anyway.
Yeah, in most cases, you actually end up stuffing it.
That's right.
It's the weirdest
experience. That's the strange side. That's this like third side to the coin that is quantum and shouldn't exist in reality, that you find to confidence, which is, man, I don't know how many times today that I hit it nowhere near where I was trying to hit it. And I hit it so bad that it ended up at the flag. And that is where you're walking down the fairway just laughing to yourself. Because how many times have you had the opposite where, man, did I hit that good, but I tried to land it right there and it went boop and bopped off and I got a double. Whereas you go, I can't hit it any better.
Yeah.
And so that's that fragile. I say fragile not to put anybody down because I'm fragile too. Every golfer's fragile. Every golfer has this sense of, if they get nervous, if the hair on the back of the neck stands up, if their heart rate goes up, if they start feeling a certain way, it's never conducive to playing. That doesn't mean it's going to sink them, and pros and good players have methodology to get rid of that and beyond that.
But that's not really who this video is for, man. This video is for that guy that is practicing 9 holes after work because they're playing in the men's club this week.
But it's relative. It's relative, so right? It's all relative.
So they're playing in the men's club this week. So I just want to encapsulate our audience here, buddy.
Yeah.
So we got this guy or this gal. They're getting 9 holes in after work.
Yeah.
They're preparing for a men's club event. They know they're going to be nervous. That's what this game is for. This game is like, it's training. It's proper practice, which will lead to results under pressure.
Right.
So I think, just to kind of bring it all in and start concluding this call, because we're going to run out of time here on Google Meet. I think the idea that we're getting to today is this is a training game, right?
Yeah.
So
it's a training game that puts you into a position where you baseline your game. If all else fails, I'm going to be able to get up and down from a reasonable spot. And if you're a bogey golfer, that might mean making 1 or 2 extra pars around. Well, that'll bring your handicap down. If you're better than bogey golfer, it'll be, the idea of golf, which I think is sort of ubiquitous, I'd imagine, is that I want to try to get good. But a lot of times people get frustrated with the practice because, the more I practice, I don't really get any better. Well, if you did this once, you'd find, whoa, at the very least, I really should probably practice these easy pitch shots because that's an easy spot. And a good player would get up and down there 8 times out of 10. And I didn't get up and down once.
Right.
Okay. So now I know what to practice. When I go to the course, it's sort of like going to the gym. I never know what to do at the gym. I wander around, picking up weights and going, this feels good.
We're down to like the last minute, buddy. So.
Okay. Yeah. So, I mean, we'll talk more about this with everybody. And please, questions if they start coming in, and we'll let us know what you think.
Yeah, we'll provide some actual games too in the next phase of this, so that people can go out and they can actually do this. But for now, just give it a try. Miss a few greens. See how fun it is. It's more fun than I think people are going to realize. So, anywho, thanks for the time, buddy. I really appreciate you sharing this with the public. I think people are going to get a lot out of it. And if you have anything else you want to add before we sign off, please do. Otherwise, it's been a real pleasure.
Just have fun with it. It's
Yeah.
not mine, it's yours. Make it however you want to do it, figure it out. Make yourself better by practicing the things that actually make you better.
Exactly. Love it, man. Thank you so much for this.
Yeah, bud. We'll talk soon.
All right, man. Goodbye.
All right. Bye.